Hello, my friends, and welcome to the new episode of No Stress DDS. I'm so excited to be here with you guys. Okay, let's dive in. Today, we're talking about the 3 stages of practice ownership. Here's why I wanted to start with this topic. I see a lot of people overwhelmed and struggling with the load of running a practice because they don't really know what to focus on in their day. Okay. And when I hear people say, the burden of owning a practice is really challenging, or owning a practice is so much harder, I'm working so many more hours and I'm barely seeing my kids. What is happening is it's not that owning a practice is inherently harder than being an associate. Both have challenges. Isn't that true? There's a reason why you decided to start a practice or are seriously considering starting a dental practice. It's not all amazing and butterflies being an associate, isn't it? Right? You don't have full autonomy over treatment plans. You are making less money a lot of the time. You don't have as much control over the treatments, your team, maybe the materials, what kind of instruments you're working with. Speaking of team, uh, your staff doesn't take you as seriously or doesn't listen to you as much as if you're the owner. I don't know a single associate whose team respects and listens to them more than to the boss, like more than to the person who's signing their checks, their paychecks, right? So there are things with associateship that we don't love, and that's why we're considering private practice or buying a practice. But of course, buying a practice means now we are the business owner. We actually need to worry about marketing and bring patients in and managing staff and all these things, right? So I don't believe that owning a practice is inherently harder than being an associate. It just has different challenges. And when people struggle and feel overwhelmed, I believe it is because they are not realizing what stage of practice ownership you're in and what you need to focus on. So this podcast is going to help you. At the end of this podcast, you will know for sure I am in this stage and this is what I need to focus on. And you'll be able to structure your days and work fewer hours. Because isn't that true that when we have the focus and we know exactly what to focus on, we just get that done and we get out, right? So this is my goal for this episode, to help you do that. Okay. So there are 3 stages of dental practice ownership. Stage number 1, and then there's a pre-stage. So stage number 1 is a startup stage. It's a stage where you are about 1 to 5 years into owning a practice. Either you bought an existing practice or you started it from scratch. It does not matter. Your challenges are very similar. That's why I call it a startup stage. Then the second stage is, I'm going to introduce the stages and then I'm going to give you more details about each stage. So that was a startup stage. Next is a growth stage. It is about 5 to 10 years into being a practice owner, okay? You have figured out how to do your marketing and your team is growing and it opens a whole new bucket of challenges. So that was a growth stage. And then the last stage is a scale stage, right? When we're scaling our practice, our business. I see this happening about 10 years into dental practice and more. Okay. And then, I said startup, growth, and scale. And then there's a pre-stage, okay, where you're seriously considering starting a practice. So now that you know that there are 3 stages and pre-stage, I want you to make a mental note and think about, okay, which stage am I in? And I'm going to give you a little bit more detail about each stage so you can really pinpoint where do you think you are. And then I'm going to tell you the exact things you need to focus on, okay? All right, so let's start with the pre-stage. Pre-stage is a stage where you are currently an associate, but you are seriously considering starting a private practice. And what I see a lot of people do, mainly, I think, because we don't have enough business education, we don't have enough mentors, especially us women. Most mentors are men that I see out there. So we don't really have a good grasp of what's going to happen on the other side once we buy a practice. And so this pre-stage is an important stage where I want you to not just mentally make a decision, okay, maybe talk to your husband, maybe talk to your children and say, okay, guys, mama is thinking to do this. Is everybody on board? This is a great conversation to have, but I also want you to be more prepared and gather information so that you are walking into practice ownership prepared. Okay. So that's your pre-stage. Then stage number one is you've started a practice. Either you bought it from somebody else or you're starting it from scratch, the startup phase. And the most important challenges that you're going to be having, or the biggest challenges you're going to be having, are twofold. If it's a startup, either way, actually, if it's a startup or if it's an existing practice, the number one skill you need to focus on is marketing and sales. Okay. So what it looks like when we translate it from the business world to the dental practice world is you need to start figuring out how you're going to be bringing in new patients and how are you going to turn them into active existing patients. Okay. Again, regardless of your specialty, it does not matter. It is a little bit easier if you have purchased a practice with existing patients, but not necessarily, because depending on the systems that the previous doctor had in place, you may run out of all of these new patients and existing treatments, and then you still have to figure out the system, right? And maybe another doctor was accepting some insurances, or maybe it was personal relationships, or maybe they had referring dentists. You are a new person now, okay? And you have to reestablish or create those relationships. So you will not be able to feed on the previous doctor's funnel, like the way they were bringing new patients, unless you figure out that system for yourself. Okay. So that's if you bought an existing practice. If you're a startup, obviously that completely applies to you, right? You need to figure out how to get patients, right? A lot of people sign up with insurances and that's great, but I see that it's often not enough. We still need to figure out organic marketing, inorganic marketing, maybe online, offline, referrals. This is what you're going to start learning, which you didn't have to do as much or at all as an associate. Okay. So the number one thing you need to focus on in a startup phase, and the number one challenge, is marketing and sales, bringing in new patients. And once they are there, or like, how can we actually get them to show up? And whoever is doing consults, it could be just you, great. It could be a treatment coordinator or a manager. What's their conversion rate? How well they're converting these patients? What are the conversations going on? What is the financial process? This is what you're figuring out in this first stage of practice, startup phase, 1 to 5 years. If you had purchased a practice from somebody else, you have another component there, which is staff management. Right? You already have an existing team. If you're a startup, you have to bring in a new team. So you're already starting to manage team and figure out the leadership style and, all the ins and outs of HR. But here's what I want you to know is if you have purchased someone else's practice and you and the staff seem to be great, and now it's been 6 months and things are not working out as well, or a year, I just want you to know, I think most people don't talk about this, but I want you to know is that when you purchase an existing practice, staff turnover in the first couple of years, especially the first year in your practice, is completely normal. Okay, I'm going to pause here because I want to let it sink in. We think that if we purchase a practice from somebody else, they have this marketing machine going, like the doctor had established how the new patients are coming in, and we have an existing staff, and existing patients love the team, and it's just going to be so much easier. But have you noticed how many people have staff turnover in their first couple of years of buying someone else's practice? If you have not noticed that, I'm here to tell you, because what happens is when we don't know that, we think something is wrong with us. We think we're not a good leader. We think that people don't like us, or we can't manage the practice. And that's when we get overwhelmed in this first startup stage, because we have to let people go, or people are leaving us. We're like, what is going on? I can't even figure out how to find new patients, and now my team is leaving. Totally, totally normal. Okay. Now that you know that this is what is going to happen in the first stage, you're prepared. And then I'm going to tell you what to focus on too. Okay. So this was a startup stage, first 1 to 5 years in practice, marketing and sales, and was starting to learn some team leadership, team management. Okay. Growth phase is phase number 2. It's about 5 to 10 years into owning a practice. You have figured out your marketing. Okay. You have figured out how to bring new patients. You know what levers to pull. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's more of a routine. You know that you need to have this many lunch and learns, or you have to visit dental offices, or that you're ascending, like gift baskets to your referrals, or that you're going to set up a booth in school, or, maybe run Facebook ads and you figured out a website and a marketing company and things like that. So new patients is like not as much of a problem. But because you have more patients, more active patients, you had to hire more staff. And so your team is growing in these first 10 years of owning a dental practice. And now it becomes hectic. It becomes a little unorganized. And the main challenges that you are going to have in this growth phase is managing your team, because your team is growing. And now you want to make sure that everybody's doing a good job. Now you want to make sure that they're not fighting. You want to make sure that things are smooth and your patients are having a good experience. So your 2 main focuses are on managing your team and creating systems and processes. You've probably heard about systems like protocols, processes for the practice. That's what practice management consultants do, right? You can hire somebody to come into your practice and look at all the processes and create all the protocols for you and even train your staff. And that's all wonderful and great. You can outsource it and they can do that work for you. The problem that I'm seeing is maintaining the systems, right? It's almost like, imagine the house is a mess, or you have like this one room in the house that's a mess, and you finally pull the trigger and you hire an organizer, somebody who comes and organizes everything in color codes and, puts cute little bins and, tags and everything. It looks wonderful. And then a month from now, it does not look wonderful, right? Has anyone experienced that or heard of that? Or you can at least imagine this? And the reason why this happens is just merely organizing practice and creating these protocols is one part of the deal. Another part is what I'm going to help you do in No Stress DDS is how to maintain this, right? You need to be able to have conversations with your team where you hold them accountable. You need to be able to learn to have these sometimes difficult conversations, not take things personally, be a strategic leader, know what to track so that your practice can run like a well-oiled machine, okay? This is what the second stage is all about. Hiring more staff, learning how to manage more people, and putting into place systems and protocols, clinical and sales protocols, for your practice to growing and running smoothly. Okay, so this is your stage 2. Stage 3, scaling, is when you have cleaned up your systems, your practice is running well, you understand your marketing, you are converting new patients into existing patients well, you have good conversion rate, and now your practice has taken off, the number of active patients has increased, your team has increased, and it's time to scale. The way we scale is either you will want to hire an associate or open more days, or maybe you have outgrown your space and now you need to move to a bigger office or add in new chairs. Okay. And one of the biggest challenges I see at this stage is just the self-concept of somebody who is managing a multiple $1 million business, because that's what you're going to be making at this stage. And if most of us women doctors, women dentists, most of us come from families that are not like super rich. Our parents were not very wealthy. They were mostly blue collar, maybe white collar, but they had instilled that we need to work hard, that we need to, control the quality, and we need to respect and value money, and money don't grow on trees. And so we have this mentality of somebody who is fairly frugal with money. And now you have this $250,000 expense coming in to pay salary for an associate. Or now you have this $300,000 loan you have to take on to pay for the bigger space because you're moving to a new to the new practice, to the new office. And these large sums of money for us, they're large, again, because we didn't come from, a super rich family. It could be very triggering for our nervous system. It could be very shocking. Oh my God, I just saw this. I just had to move this huge sum of money from my savings account or from my investment account and pay the down payment for the new practice, or my payroll just increased exponentially from when I was the only doctor. That is very mentally challenging for us unless we work on our self-concept and we become that scalable person who has this multi-million-dollar practice. Okay, so this is one biggest challenge and the focus that we need to have in the scaling phase. And then the second one is when we're bringing in new person or we are opening extra chairs, we have to start delegating. Okay, there's no way we can work 8 days a week, 20 hours a day, right? It's just not going to happen, and manage 18 people staff. At this point, we have to start really learning delegating. And I know a big challenge for us is to start relinquishing that control, because we want to maintain high quality of care. We want to maintain good customer patient experience, but we have to learn to do it through systems and through delegation. So this is the biggest piece that I see people struggle with when they're scaling. Okay, so now I've told you the stages and I have told you the main challenges that we have at each stage. So now a final piece of this podcast, of this episode, is I'm going to tell you what to focus on at each stage. And at the end, I have a worksheet, a cheat sheet for you that you can download, and you can see exactly with little squares, checklist of things that you need to focus on every single day, depending on your stage. So I'm going to tell you all these details at the end of this episode. All right, let's start with the pre-phase. If you're in this pre-phase where you are seriously considering buying a practice, the number one thing you need to focus on is time management. And I'll tell you why. The reason why is because you're living a life, you're a busy mom, there's a lot of things going on. Even as an associate, you're a living human being with probably children, because that's most of my clients. And so you have to carve out specific time in your week so you can learn about practice management, so you can learn about marketing, so you can learn about dental insurances, so you can talk with other practice owners and ask their experience, and you can go to networking events and start talking to potential sellers, look into companies that help you do due diligence, all this lingo, all the things that go into buying and starting a practice. You need to carve out time to do that. So this is going to be in the number one thing you need to focus on in the pre-stage. In stage number one, the startup, your main focus is on marketing and sales. Okay. So you need to start, all you're going to be focusing on day after day. Of course, you have to manage your team, and your small team, thank God, so far. And you have to manage the treatments and the patient experience and the back end. But the main bulk of your focus has to be on marketing and sales. Because if you don't have patients, you don't have a business, right? We can all agree with that. And so you will need to start tracking where your new patients are coming from, and what things have you tried marketing wise, and what's the ROI, the return on investment on these things. And like I said, I have a cheat sheet for you step by step to download to tell you exactly what to focus on. But that's your main focus, is marketing and sales, okay? Stage 2, the growth stage, your main focus is on systems and leadership, okay? Managing a team and creating systems where you have a smooth flow in your practice for your patients and your operations. In stage 3, the scaling phase, your main focus is on yourself. You're growing your self-concept as a multi-million-dollar practice owner, business owner, while being a mom and a woman and a human. And on refining your system so that you can better delegate to your bigger team and your associate. All right, my friends, I hope that was super helpful. Let me know what stage you're in. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to email me. And I'm going to link in the show notes a cheat sheet for you to download that has the exact checklist of things to focus on depending on your stage. And it has all of the stages so that as you progress through these stages, you know exactly how to structure your days and what to focus on. All right, my friends, have the most beautiful day, and I will catch you next week. Bye.